Hello everyone, I'm Jayashree. Welcome to my channel and to another tutorial. This one's for a crochet cardigan, and for this cardigan I'm using the popcorn stitch. So for this pattern there's no actual sizes. I'll be using body measurements to work the pattern. Now for this cardigan here, I've used my own body measurements, and you'll do the same using your own body measurements. I do supply those measurements, which I get from Craft Yarn Council's website. However, should you feel that you wish to take your own measurements, that's perfectly fine. I will explain how to in the tutorial as we go along. So let's begin. Hope you enjoy this tutorial. And yes, one other thing, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I really do appreciate your support. We'll begin with our foundation chain. Now just to let you know that we're working this cardigan lengthwise. That means the measurement that we need for the length of our cardigan is from our neckline to the length that we want it as, going down. So we'll begin the foundation chain with a slip knot. And then you'll chain a number of chains to match the length that you're looking for, or you're looking to make your cardigan at. So for my actual cardigan, I worked 101 chains for the foundation chain, because that was the length that I wanted it at from my neckline going down. You'll work that length of chains in multiples of 2 plus 1. For purposes of this demonstration, I'll work a shorter chain. I'm going to chain 26 plus 1. But remember, you will chain a much longer chain, because obviously your cardigan's going to be longer to the length that you want it at. So here goes. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you continue to the length that you want your cardigan at. So it's an even number of chains plus 1. I've completed the length of chains, and it's like I said, it's an even number plus 1. So mine was 26 plus 1, 27 chains. Remember, you're not going to work such a short chain. Your chain will measure the length from your neckline to the bottom of the cardigan. That's the length that you want your cardigan at. So to begin, then it's round 1 into the 4th chain from the hook, double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll work a double crochet, but this time I'm working the double crochets into those bumps that you see at the back of the chain. So it's yarn over, insert the hook into that little bump that you see at the back of the chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And I'll continue on with double crochets, working those double crochets into the bumps that I see at the back of the chain. Continue to the end of the round. I've completed round 1 working those double crochets across. Round 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Here I'll work double crochets across to the end of the round. I've continued on completing round 2, which I had just worked double crochets to the end. Then I worked round 3, which was chain 3, turn, and double crochets to the end. And that's just a repeat of round 2. So round 4, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Into that next stitch, we'll work a double crochet. Then it's chain 1, and now we'll work the popcorn stitch. So I know the stitch is the popcorn stitch. If it is called by any other name, I'm not sure of what the name is, but I'm just going to use the name popcorn stitch. So I've chained 1, I'll skip 1, and into that next stitch I'll work 4 double crochets all into the 1 stitch. So that was my first double crochet, and then my second, the third, and the fourth. And then while pinching here so that I don't lose my stitch, I'll remove my hook and go back into that first double crochet, go back into that double crochet, go back into that loop that I was carefully guarding, and then pull that loop through that first double crochet, the top of the double crochet, and then it's a chain 1 to secure the stitch. And then it's chain 1 again, skip 1 stitch, into the next stitch I'll work another popcorn stitch, which is 4 double crochets into 1 stitch. Well, actually that's the way the stitch starts off as. So that was my first, second, third, and the fourth. And then I'll let go of my hook from that stitch, go back to the first double crochet in that set of double crochets, go back into that loop, pull that loop through the stitch, and chain 1 to secure. So here you see the stitch, and then it's chain 1, skip 1, another popcorn stitch, chain 1, skip 1, popcorn stitch, and that's the sequence for round 4. So you'll continue with the sequence to the end of the round. I've continued on and I have 3 stitches remaining. So it's actually 2 stitches and that chain 3. So I've worked my last popcorn stitch, and then I'll chain 1, skip 1 stitch, into that next stitch I'll work a double crochet, and into that space, the chain 3 space, the space between the chain 3 and the last stitch, I'll work a double crochet into that space. Round 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Work a double crochet into the double crochet, at the start. And then here for this round, we'll work double crochets into all the chain 1 spaces and a double crochet above the popcorn stitch. So into that chain 1 space, it's a double crochet. Into the stitch above the popcorn stitch, a double crochet. Here's a chain 1 space. I'll work that double crochet. Into that stitch above the popcorn stitch, a double crochet, and so on to the end of the round. I've completed round 5 and I've worked those double crochets all across to the end of the round. So right at the end, I worked it into the chain 1 space and then a double crochet into the last stitch and a double crochet into that space in between the last stitch and the chain 3. So you'll see that round 5 was on the wrong side, and you know it's the wrong side with your wrong side facing up, because you can, if you look at it, it's sort of flattened when it comes to our popcorn stitch. But when I turn it to the right side, here you can see the popcorn stitch is clearly visible. Those bumps are visible. Now that's an indicator that this is your right side, and in order for your popcorn stitch to stand out, it needs to be worked on the right side as well. I've continued on with the pattern, and all I've done was repeat round 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I have 3 rounds of double crochet in between my stitch pattern, and I have my stitch pattern running lengthwise. Along the top edge of my piece, I've measured my shoulder to shoulder measurement. Now in my case, I wear a size medium, so my shoulder to shoulder measurement is 16 inches. Now I've worked to 16 inches plus 2 inches, and here you see I have my piece, the width of my piece measures 18 inches. Yeah, that's just slightly over 18 inches, 18.5 inches, which is perfectly fine. I'd rather be over than under, because being under that measurement would just create a tighter cardigan. Now the important thing to note here is we began our piece working 3 rounds of double crochet at the start, so we also need to end with 3 rounds of double crochet at the start, and that's the reason why my measurement is actually slightly over, because I had worked the 1 round of double crochet, and then I had my my shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches, so I needed to work that 2 extra rounds in order to get some uniformity, with 3 rounds of double crochet at the start and my 3 rounds at the end. Now before we move on, we'll take some measurements, and the first measurement would be the neckline, which I would measure right at the top of the piece, and to do that I folded my piece in half. From that folded edge, measure 2 inches and place a stitch marker on either side of the piece to mark off the neckline. Now if you open up the piece, that becomes, my neckline is now 4 inches. Now to mark off the armhole depth, on the side of the piece, here's my top edge, and running lengthwise along the piece, along that side, I'll mark off my armhole depth. Let me just turn that to the side. And here my armhole depth, like I said, I wear a size medium. So it's 19 centimeters or 7.5 inches, and I'll mark that off with a stitch marker. Now that I've marked off the armhole depth on one side of my piece, you can go ahead and count the number of stitches you have from the top edge to the stitch marker. In my case, I've marked off the 27th stitch. So on the other side of the piece, here's my top edge again, and along that length of the piece, I counted 27 stitches and marked off the 27th stitch with a stitch marker. So on either side of my piece, I've marked off the armhole spaces, and to do that I use the armhole depth measurement. So now that we have all our markings, we can begin the front side of the panels. Okay, so what I've noticed when working the front side panel was the side that I had begun my back panel with that chain, that initial foundation chain, is the side that I had worked my my front side panel beginning off with that chain here on the side. So I hope that can help you a little in establishing on which side you start off at the bottom, on which side you start off at the top for the front side panel. And on the other side where I had ended off my back panel, I started off my panel at the bottom, my front side panel at the bottom, by attaching yarn to the bottom of my piece. So just, yeah, I just hope that helps a little. So I'm now working the first front side panel, and I've got my piece with my wrong side facing up, and you know it's the wrong side because the stitch pattern does not show up on the wrong side. Now right at the bottom, I'm right at the bottom of the piece, and this is the side where I had ended off my back panel on. So the same side where I've ended off my back panel on, into that chain 3 right at the bottom, I'll attach my yarn. Then it's for round 1, it's double crochet to the stitch marker, marking off the armhole depth. Now just to let you know that we will not begin both front side panels the same way. For the side that we've ended off the back panel on, we'll begin on the wrong side, right at the bottom of the back panel. But for the side that we had initially started off the back panel on, if you remember our foundation chain, on that side of our back panel, we'll begin our front side panel right at the top, again on the wrong side of the back panel. I hope that makes sense, but you'll see as we go along. Now I've worked those double crochets to my stitch marker, marking off the armhole depth. As you see, I'm working on the wrong side, facing up. So I've worked to the stitch just before the one marked to the stitch marker. And well, for my armhole depth and obviously the tightness of my stitches and so on, I had counted 27 stitches. You may have more stitches or less stitches depending on the size that you're making and so forth, but you will chain as many stitches as you have marked off. So in my case, I have 27 stitches. I'll chain 27 stitches. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you continue to the number of stitches that you have marked off. So I've worked the length of chains that I needed to match the number of stitches that I have marked off on my back panel, which in my case was 27 stitches. Then I'll chain a further 2, 1, 2, and turn. So for round 2, it's into the 4th chain from the hook, double crochet. Now we work our double crochets the same way that we had started off with, working them into those back bumps at the back of the chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, into that back bump I'll work a double crochet, and then it's continue with double crochets to the end of the chain. I've worked the double crochets into the chain, and then I'll continue on with double crochets into the stitches to the end of the round. Now that we've sorted out the first front side panel, for the next front side panel on the other side, and here I have my neckline, so on this side we'll work our front side panel. I'll begin my first round on the wrong side. So I'll turn my piece, and I'm beginning this round not at the bottom of my back panel, but right at the top, because here you see my necklines marked off, and then here's the side edge, here's my armhole depth, and I need to begin my piece off here if I'm going to work the side on the wrong side. So what I'm going to do here is completely different from the last side. Here I'm going to begin off with my chain. So I've made a slip knot, and I'll chain the number of stitches that I have marked off. In my case, 27. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you'll continue to the number of stitches you have marked off. I've chained the length of chains to match the number of stitches that I have marked off for my armhole depth. Now into that stitch just after the one marked off by the stitch marker, I'll attach my chain. Then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'll begin with double crochets to the bottom end of my back panel. I've completed round 1, and I've worked those double crochets right to the bottom of my back panel. I then worked round 2, which was chain 3, turn, and worked those double crochets back to the top of my panel. And here I am at the chain that I've worked. So here I'll work my double crochet into that chain 3, and then I'll continue with double crochets into the chain, working the double crochets into the back bumps at the back of the chain. So it may just be slightly difficult to get in, but you can use your finger to guide it along. Continue with double crochets to the end of the chain. So I've continued on working the front side panels on either side of the back panel, as you see here, and really all I did was repeat those 3 rounds of double crochet in between my this popcorn stitch pattern. So I've worked those rounds, continued to work those rounds just as I had done for the back panel, and you'll see, you'll know when to stop when you turn your piece, your front panel, over on top of the back panel with the armhole spaces, this little space here that we formed, and you can align those spaces. And you'll see at the top edge where we marked off our neckline with those 2 stitch markers. My front panel, I've worked it to reach that first stitch marker on one side of the neckline. So you'll work as many rounds as need be until when you fold your front panel on top of your back panel, and it aligns with your stitch marker, the stitch marker on one side marking off the neckline. Now I've done the same on the other side where my front panel, it aligns with the stitch marker on the other side, and this gap that's formed is my neckline. Okay, so again, you'll just repeat those steps as you did for the back panel, to work the front panel. Now that basically the body of my cardigan is complete, we'll work the sleeves. And in order to do that, here again, we continue to repeat the pattern as we did for the back panel. But my measurement, the measurement that I'm taking, well, I'll show you how to do that. You know, normally what I do is I just attach my yarn to the underarm of the armhole spaces. But in this case, I didn't want this pattern running around the armhole, or sorry, around the hand or the sleeve in a circular kind of a pattern. Instead, I wanted my pattern running lengthwise down the sleeve. So in order to do that, I need to work the sleeves separately and then attach it to my cardigan. Now to do that, the measurement that I need is my from the underarm to my wrist. And that's the measurement that I'm using. I will provide those measurements for the different sizes in the next clip. However, should you wish to take your own measurement, you can go ahead. It's just you'll place your measuring tape right at the underarm, and along the length of the hand, you will take your measurement until you reach the wrist. Now, I've used the measurement, but I did subtract 2 inches from that measurement because there is a little bit of stretch with the piece, and also I need to take into account the edging that I'll be doing at the bottom of the sleeve. Now to work the sleeves, I've chained a length of chains. Now this length of chains, as I said, it measures from my underarm to my wrist, less 2 inches. Now when I take my measurement, from my underarm to my wrist, it's 17 inches, and I wear a size medium. So here I've worked a length of chain that measures, if you can see it here, I'll just drag it along a little, measures 15 inches. And I'm not pulling on the chain or stretching the chain. I've just got the chain loosely placed here, and I'm taking that measurement, which is 15 inches. So like I said, it's the length of your arm, your hand measurement, less 2 inches, and that's just to accommodate the edging of the sleeve. Okay, so once you have that length of chains for your size or for your measurement, you'll repeat the steps as you did when you worked your back body panel. So again, you'll work round 1, working those double crochets into your chains working into the back loops only, and then you'll repeat round 2, 3, 4 and 5. And I have my sleeve already worked, so here it is, and you'll see that I've just repeated the same rounds as I did for the back panel. And you'll know when you're done when you fold the sleeve in half, and along the top edge of your sleeve, this should measure the same measurement as your armhole depth. Now all I've done was I just placed my cardigan, my front and back panel here, and here you see here's the armhole depth measurement, and I'll take that and I'll align it with, and it matches, and I'm happy with that. So that's what you'll do, because essentially what we're doing is we'll be fitting this sleeve into this armhole space that we've created. So now that I've got my sleeves worked, and remember you need 2 of them, we've got a little bit of stitching to do. So I'll fold my sleeve in half and the wrong side facing out. And well, I've left the tail end of my yarn before I fastened off rather long to help with the stitching. And I've got my yarn needle, and I'm just going to stitch along the edge of my sleeve panels to bring the 2 sides together. And I'm just stitching stitch for stitch along the length of the sleeve panel. So you continue to the end to complete the sleeve panel. I've seamed up along the length of my sleeve, and I've done that for both panels as you see here. So that completes the sleeve. Now before I attach the sleeve onto my back and front panels, I need to seam the top edge of my shoulders, sort of the shoulder part of the cardigan. And to do that, I've got my yarn needle and thread, and here from matching the front panel, the end of the front panel, with that stitch marker that marks off the neckline at the top, I'll go ahead and seam along the shoulder seams. I've completed the stitching along the shoulders, and I've done that on either side. So that just attaches the front panel to the back panel at the shoulders. Now to attach the sleeve into the armhole spaces, and I've already set it up here. I've got my cardigan. Here's my back panel, and here's my front panel above the back panel. Remember, I've already seamed up along the shoulders. And here's my sleeve. Well, the wrong side's facing out. Here's my sleeve, and I've got my sleeve, the right side facing out. So I'll take the sleeve and I'll insert it into in between the back and front panel, and I'll align that the sleeve edge with the armhole space. So here it is, like so, and the seam of the sleeve is in line with the underarm of the armhole space. So once you've got that aligned, you can go ahead with your yarn needle and attach the sleeve to the cardigan. So here I'm just going to seam along the edge of my sleeve and the armhole space. And you'll continue all around to attach the sleeve. I've attached the sleeve to the armhole space, and I've done the same on the other side for the other sleeve. We'll now work the edging along the bottom of the sleeve. Now I'm using a different yarn. Well, basically it's the same weight that I've always been using. It's the DK weight or the light worsted. And that's, to be honest, that's only because I ran out of yarn. But here goes. So attach your yarn to the bottom edge of the sleeve. And then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now you'll see here at the bottom edge of the sleeve, there's no actual stitches to follow along to. So what I'll do is, in those spaces that you see, I'll just work 2 stitches into each of those spaces. So my chain 3 counts as my first stitch. And here's another one into that same space, a double crochet. And then I'll hop over to that next space and I'll work 2 double crochets into that space, and so on until I get to the end of the round. I'm at the end of round 1 for the sleeve edging, and before I can end off round 1, I need to count the number of stitches that I have, making certain that this time it's an even number of stitches. So in order to work the next round, I need an even number of stitches. I've counted the number of stitches I have, and I've got 60, so that's perfect. I'll end off round 1 by slip stitching into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. Now remember that chain 3 counts as a stitch as well. So round 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and here into that same stitch as chain 3, I'll work 3 more double crochets. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And then again I'll work my popcorn stitch going into the 3rd chain from chain 3, and then I'll bring it in to form the popcorn stitch, and then it's chain 1 to secure the stitch, chain 1 again, skip the next stitch, and into that next stitch I'll work a popcorn stitch. And you'll continue to the end of the round. So I've completed the edging to the sleeve, and to end the round I chained 1 in between the last popcorn stitch and the first, and I slip stitched into the stitch above that first popcorn stitch. Then it's fastened off and cut off the excess yarn. So now that our sleeves are edged, There's just one more final step before completing the cardigan, and that's to edge along the opening and the bottom of the cardigan. So what I've already done here is I've attached yarn to the bottom right at the center of the cardigan, the bottom center, and I worked all around the bottom edge and the opening of the cardigan. I worked 3 rounds of double crochet. You see it here. I then fastened off only because I'm changing my yarn, just to give it some uniformity, or like rather match the sleeves, the edging at the bottom of the sleeves. So then I'll attach my yarn again at the bottom. And then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and here to edge along the opening of the cardigan, I'll work front post double crochets alternating with back post double crochets, and that will be my stitch pattern throughout. So for a front post double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook behind, well, this is the post of the stitch, so you inserting the hook into that post of the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and that's a front post double crochet. So then for a back post double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook into that post of the next stitch, but this time we're going from behind, and then it's pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and then you alternate between the front post double crochet and the back post double crochet. And you'll do this all along the bottom edge of the cardigan, going along the opening of the cardigan, and you'll end back at the bottom edge of the cardigan. I've continued on, and to end round 1 of the border or edging, I slip stitched into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. I then continued to repeat round 1 with the chain 3, and then I alternated between the front post double crochets and the back post double crochets, and right at the end I slip stitched to join. Now I've worked that round or that repeat, I think it was 10 times, and that's because I wanted a nice thick border or edging. So you work as many repeats as need be in order to get the edging to your liking. Yeah, and that's it. So that completes the cardigan. All that's left to do is to fasten off, cut off the excess yarn, and to weave in all those ends. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.